This week, President Trump hosts surprise guests at the White House, and they make a lot of news. Democrats heading to El Salvador to rescue illegal aliens? And you'll never believe who's become the most unlikely ally of school choice now. These stories and much more straight ahead on The Lion Week in Review. Welcome into this week's edition of The Lion Week in Review. It's a weekly look at the culture, the courts, your state capitol, and your kids. I'm Chris Stegall. Now, let's meet the panel. The gentlemen behind the stories at readlion.com wore one light this week, so Josh Mann, our managing editor, Adam Wittenberg, deputy editor, both with a little more to carry this week. Gentlemen, welcome to you both as we head to the Lion and talk about this Holy Week. We're heading into Easter. Josh, we'll start with you. A lot of people were pleasantly surprised, certainly Christians were, at the, I want to say forceful embrace of, maybe that's not the word, but the bold embrace, I guess we'll say, of the Easter season.
Yeah, it was very bold. The president put out a statement, the White House released, really talking about what Christians celebrate on this weekend of Good Friday and Easter. And here's what he said. I want to read it. During the sacred week, we acknowledge the glory of Easter Sunday cannot come without the sacrifice Jesus Christ made on the cross. In his final hours on earth, Christ willingly endured excruciating pain, torture, and execution on the cross out of a deep and abiding love for all his creation. Through his suffering, we have redemption. Through his death, we are forgiven of our sins. Through his resurrection, we have hope of eternal life. Now, for Christians, this is a message that's familiar and core to the Christian faith, but to hear it from the White House is a refreshing departure from the previous 4 years. And it reminds me actually of the 5 years I lived in Britain, where the Queen would come out with these Christmas and Easter time statements that were just full of Christian faith, and yet here I was living in this supposedly secular nation wondering, why doesn't this happen in the United States, where 70% of the population still, at least nominally, says they're Christian? So I thought this was welcome from the White House. They are putting their money where their mouth is. They want faith to be welcome in the public square.
Yeah, and the difference is, Adam, I think what Josh's kind of rhetorical question is that an endorsement or is that just a statement of fact, what Trump's statement said? I mean, to Josh's point, in Europe, in the UK specifically, the palace, they embrace it. Why haven't we here prior to this? What makes this statement so exceptional?
Yeah, well, I mean, first I want to point out Trump's a bigot because he didn't mention the Easter bunny. And, he doesn't like bunnies. He's probably very anti-animal, and we need to get him out of office immediately because Easter is about Easter bunnies and eggs and things. And so by him acknowledging Christian Easter, the true foundation of the holiday, he's discriminating against the people that want their bunnies and their eggs and probably wants to take all those things away. So we really need to, hold back on this. I mean, the article mentioned how the Biden administration had even proclaimed, I think it was some trans holiday one year coincided with Easter, and they gave like paragraphs to that and short shrift to religious Easter. Trump's just writing the balance, and he's speaking fact, just like 10 Commandments that we're going to talk about as well.
Yeah, Josh, just to spend a minute more on that, you rhetorically asked why the embrace in Europe but not here. Have you answered that in your own mind?
Well, I think there's still this acceptance, at least in Britain. For example, when the Queen was still living, she polled really well, and so most British people, when you meet them, they want a priest to marry them. They want a priest to bury them. There is still this cultural assent, I think, to Christianity. This maybe feel-good aspect to it, and I think acceptance of tradition. Here in the United States, the alleged separation of church and state, which I think is a misnomer, I think has had a real influence. And so in spite of being more religious as a country, we've tended to be wary of faith in the public square. I think that's starting to change, actually, and I think that's a good thing.
Adam, also at readlion.com, and we're going to get into this a little later in the show as well. In fact, just this week, some interesting news about Title IX coming out of the Justice Department. But, and incidentally, I should say Riley Gaines was part of it. Again, Riley seems to pop up everywhere. But Adam, what's the latest at readlion.com?
Yeah, we have a really good story from one of our writers, Tom Joyce, and he talks about how this trend is real and developing, that more women are taking bold stands, taking action. There was this fencer, Stephanie Turner, I believe was her name, who refused to fight another a male, this transgender athlete, and she took a knee. And then just a few days later, this woman was going to throw, disc golf, and there was a transgender athlete, and she got up to throw, and then she shouted to the audience, like, "This is wrong. This needs to stop." And we're seeing more women speaking out. It's a very encouraging trend, and if you read the story, it will kind of document kind of how those momentum is building and the steps, and give some hopeful encouragement.
And the Trump administration, as we will talk about a little later, Josh, they have made good on threats to withhold funding. If people get crossways with federal regulations on Title IX, they'll pull funds, and they have.
That's right. And so we've covered this in multiple stories, different states that actually the Trump administration is from whom they're withholding funds. And Maine is one of the big ones. And it's a battle, and the courts are getting involved, and we'll see kind of how it shakes out. But the administration is saying, look, you are violating Title IX protections for biological women when you allow these transgender athletes who are male biologically to compete. It's unfair, and I think, as Adam said, and as the story points out, women are beginning to stand up and speak out. For years, there was a lot of pressure, for the few years before this, for them not to speak out, and I think a lot of fear. Now that fear is beginning to break as this momentum of brave young women grows, and so it's encouraging to see.
Adam, the story of, I guess we'll put it, overreaction at readline.com on this next one, the American flag, and a kid asking a simple question about it gets the cops called.
Yeah, this is a real but a little bit strange and very disturbing story out of Maryland, where a high school senior who knew that state policy requires, and the school district's policy in Baltimore County requires an American flag in every classroom. Well, this young man was in school, and he would notice that multiple classrooms did not have American flags. Now he took, he got in his car, drove to the Board of Ed office, and showed up kind of asking this question. He may have been, obviously that's kind of a confrontational way of doing things, but it's not wrong to go into a place and, hey, I want to know, why is this happening? Well, he was met with a police response and given an immediate 1-week suspension. He's now suing the district, and what's chilling to me is this feels like communism, where even questioning the state is a crime, and that's what this young man did.
Yeah, and we've heard this repeatedly. School districts coming in between parents and kids often when it comes to their personal lives, the trans-identifying stuff, but flags too. Any opportunity, it seems. We often see these authoritarians, Josh, trying to insert themselves with the authority of the state between the family and the child.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons stories like this are important. Even though they're sort of exceptional, we don't see this happening in half of the districts, but we see steps toward these kinds of things happening in a lot of districts. And so if parents don't continue to watch what their children are facing in their schools, the policies, how the administrators are handling issues like this, then they simply won't know what's going on. And it's one of the reasons the line exists.
I'm going to stay with you, Josh. Speaking of at the line, you guys are covering Texas. We know we're watching Texas maybe get closer to universal school choice. Texas doing some interesting things, I guess in certain parts of Texas anyway, paying public school kids to attend. What do you know about that?
Yeah, this is really interesting to me because the funding formula in Texas results in schools getting paid a little bit more money when students actually show up to class, which sounds like exactly the way it should be. Now, some school administrators and some within the establishment wish that funding would only be based on enrollment, but as a result, because schools can get hundreds of thousands of dollars more, or for large districts even millions more when kids actually show up to class, these school districts are encouraging attendance. And we've seen chronic absenteeism as a major issue across the nation in school districts since the pandemic. I think from a taxpayer perspective, isn't it right that when we fund schools, we expect them to make sure the kids are in the classroom actually receiving the instruction? Because I can speak for myself as a taxpayer, that's what I want to be funding, is actual education of children, not an empty seat.
So for clarification, Josh, that is incentivizing districts to push attendance.
That's
meaning,
right.
Yeah, supervised.
And in some of the cases, in some of these districts, I mean, they're coming up with clever ways, even ways that I'm a little critical of, coming up with games and different things to like get kids there. To some extent, some of the tricks that, like, for an example, maybe a less positive example, they're making classes easier or offering certain extracurriculars that count as class credit. So, hey, come to this easy PE class and we'll count you here, so we'll get our money. I'm not sure I like that, but it still is incentivizing schools to get kids to the school.
Adam, we talked about flags a little while ago. Back to the story of the Ten Commandments. This was an issue in Louisiana, and now it's come to Arkansas. What do you know?
Yeah, well, Arkansas is now the second state following Louisiana to require the Ten Commandments to be displayed in every school and in the classrooms. And obviously this rattles people on the left who have done a really good job, like we talked about with Easter, trying to divorce America from its Christian roots. This country was founded on biblical values, which are very well summed up in the Ten Commandments. Ten Commandments are the foundation for all Western law and legal systems and remain relevant to this day. And as I always like to point out, the law says that Congress shall not make any establishment of religion. Well, which religion are you establishing? Is it Christianity or is it Judaism? Because the Ten Commandments apply to both.
All right, fellas, thank you. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to take a peek inside the media fishbowl. There was a lot this week, and we'll review it all when we get back on the Lion Week in Review. Sit tight. Welcome back to the Lion Week in Review. If you've missed any of today's show, or you're interested in more great news and information like you're hearing today, be sure always regularly check it out at readlion.com. I'm Chris, back with the panel, Josh and Adam. As we turn to the sights and sounds of the week on cable news, El Salvador's President Bukele visited the White House and made a lot of news, answering the press corps sitting there next to President Trump about a illegal alien here in the United States. Media continues to refer to him as a Maryland man or a Maryland dad, but he was inadvertently swept up in the Tren de Aragua sweep a few weeks ago. He's now in jail in El Salvador. The president of El Salvador being asked here in the White House this week by the press, you're gonna send him back. The courts want him back, and here's how he responded.
We're very happy, and we're very eager to help. We know that you have a crime problem, a terrorism problem that you need help with. And we're a small country, but if we can help, we will do it. And we actually turned the murder capital of the world, that was the journalists call it, right? Murder capital of the world, into the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. And, sometimes they say that we imprisoned thousands. I like to say that we actually liberated millions. So, it's very good.
Trump liked that line. They like to say we imprisoned thousands. I like to say we liberated millions. Trump liked that, Adam.
Yeah, I like it too. I think, and Bukele, the voters like it. I think he had about 90% re-election rate. I mean, the country was completely unsafe, El Salvador. You can look at the statistics, and now it is the safest country in North or South America, and therefore one of the safest in the world.
What about this, that El Salvador has some sort of responsibility to return this guy to the United States, Josh?
Yeah, I think the left is, they're trying to, and the advocates who really believe in this man's innocence, they're just trying to leverage, they're pulling whatever levers they can, and so they, and reporters predictably asked the El Salvador president about this. He seems, what I'm hearing him say is, look, it's about safety and security. There's no mechanism for us to return this man, and he even, I think, implies that this man is connected with terrorism, and because of these alleged gang connections. Now, we'll see how it shakes out, but it sounds like there's no incentive from El Salvador's side to be sending him back, and clearly the Trump administration doesn't plan to bring him back either.
It is sort of ironic that Democrats are now demanding Trump tell a foreign leader what he's to do with his own citizens. That's something they've been critical of all along here in these first few months. But anyway, Democrats are trying to find their groove. They're trying to find their voice in all of this, and so they think this is the issue. Gentlemen, Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, Cory Booker, the senator from New Jersey, the Maryland governor, they're all weighing in on this. In fact, Senator Van Hollen is, I think as we record this, in El Salvador. Here's a clip of him at the airport.
I'm here at the airport. I'm about to board my flight for San Salvador. The goal of this mission is to let the Trump administration, to let the government of El Salvador know that we are going to keep fighting to bring Abrego Garcia home until he returns to his family. I hope to meet with representatives of the government. I hope to have the chance to actually see Kilmar and see what his condition is. But we are going to keep fighting because this is a miscarriage of justice.
This, to me, Adam, feels very similar to the signal kerfuffle a few weeks ago. They really thought they had a thing here, and they grabbed onto it. The American people didn't share that point of view. Where's this going politically?
Yeah, I think it'll be about the same. The man is not a U.S. citizen. He is a citizen of the nation of El Salvador. He's now been returned there, rightly or wrongly, but he is under that jurisdiction and that government. So, yes, the Democrats love to play politics with these things and try to make the most out of it. It's good political, soup, so to speak, but I don't think it will have a response. Voters voted overwhelmingly in November, close the border, crack down on illegal immigration, and I don't think this will turn that tide.
Adam called my attention to this clip, and keeping that in mind, what he just said and that discussion that we were just having, here's a CNN, their head pollster, clip this past week of them just aghast at voters' reaction to Republicans and Democrats and who voters believe cares more about them.
To me, is one of the most shocking pieces of poll data that I truthfully have seen this year, or maybe in any prior year.
Really?
Yes, really, because I want you to take a look. Cares more about the needs for people like you. You mentioned the Cape Ball. We got a tie, even after this tariff war had already started, split between Democrats and Republicans on how people feel. Which party cares more for needs of people like you? And why is that so surprising? Because I want you to take a look at prior years. Democrats always lead on this question. Back in 2017, before the 2018 midterms, 13-point lead. 2005, a 23-point lead for Democrats. 1994, which was a big Republican year, a 19-point lead for Democrats. And now, all of a sudden, a tie?
I mean, Josh, if they're shocked, perhaps they need to consider Maryland Senator Van Hollen on his flight to rescue an illegal alien, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, this guy's giving CNN great ratings. I don't know where they found him, but we see him every few weeks, just exasperated over these poll results. But, a lot of Americans aren't surprised because this has been the opinion of the American people for the last couple of years. As during the 4 years of the Biden administration, people were really getting sick and tired of the liberal agenda, and especially this kind of catering to the far left that Democrats have been doing, where a lot of the party are just moderate blue-collar types, average Americans, who said, wait a minute, this isn't the party that I thought it was. And so it is still shocking. I mean, those results are incredible, but I think it also goes to show that why Trump won decisively in November and why he continues to poll relatively well in the among the American people.
I mean, we were literally treated to the grisly details in the verdict against an illegal alien who murdered a woman in Maryland, a jogger. And, the Democrats' most vocal role this week in the discussion is going to El Salvador to try to bring an illegal alien back home. It's politically tone deaf and stunning to me. But we move on to Attorney General Pam Bondi this week. Gentlemen joined. This was a unique press conference. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon was with her. We talked about this earlier in the show. The governor of Maine, in a unique back and forth with Donald Trump a few weeks ago, said she was eager to see him in court. Well, they decided to make good on that this morning.
We want to make sure that if you open women's sports or intimate facilities to males, you expose yourself to federal civil rights investigations. Governor Mills will definitely get her wish.
Well, Adam, that's the news. The Trump administration is going to court over this with the governor of Maine.
Yeah, it's refreshing to see the administration back up not only its promises, but also its threats in a way. Trump could not have been more clear before the election, during the election, and now after. We're going to ban this, and we will crack down on it. And they're taking the exact actions they've promised and that I believe the American people want.
All right, now this one you could have knocked me over with a feather this week. This is a clip that we saw from Whoopi Goldberg, no less, on The View as she discusses educational choice, something that we advocate here and we talk a lot about, and you wouldn't necessarily think you'd hear this from The View, but watch this.
And maybe some of what's happening, like, they're trying to take apart the Department of Education.
Yes.
Maybe that is a good thing, because maybe it will force us to make sure that our kids actually get what they need. Maybe it'll force us to go to our state and say, listen, I want to make sure, since you're taking all this money from my taxes, I want to make sure that my kids get exactly what they need. I don't have to wait for the government to do it. We can do it. This is now in our hands.
Yes, that was Whoopi Goldberg. That was not an April Fool's joke. Josh?
How old is Whoopi? I mean, kudos, though. I don't know how long it's taken her to come to the light side, but welcome. I mean, this is the conservative argument for small government. This is what conservatives have been arguing about education. Let's ensure that our kids are getting what they need to get. Let's not depend on the government, especially the federal government. Let's return control to local control. And let's be sure, and she wasn't huge on parents' rights in that specific bit, but it goes along with what she's saying. Let's ensure that parents have a say and that parents have options. This sounds great.
But yeah, I mean, embracing getting rid of the Department of Education on The View.
Yeah,
wow.
Maybe it's a good thing.
Wow. Adam, while we're on that, hold your thought if you had one on that. While we hear from another traditional adversary of Donald Trump's, had a surprise admission this week on his show after visiting the Trump White House. Bill Maher.
And let me first say that to all the people who treated this like it was some kind of summit meeting, you're ridiculous. Like I was going to sign a treaty or something. I have no power. I'm a comedian, and he's the most powerful leader in the world. I'm not the leader of anything, except maybe a contingent of centrist-minded people who think there's got to be a better way of running this country than hating each other every minute. So, thank you. So meet up in person. Maybe it'll be different. Spoiler alert, it was. First good sign, before I left for the Capitol, I had my staff collect and print out this list of almost 60 different insulting epithets that the president has said about me. Things like stupid, dummy, lowlife dummy, sleazebag, sick, sad, stone cold crazy. Really a dumb guy, fired like a dog, his show is dead. There's 60. I brought this to the White House because I wanted him to sign it, which he did.
Adam, is there something in the air?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should call this segment Liberals Get Honest. And it's refreshing to see that many of the conservative positions are very commonsensical. I mean, they're so basic, they're common. I think that kind of offends the liberal mind. And it does not fit the media caricature of President Trump that even though politically he might be very strong in his positions, he could be a warm, friendly, sociable, personable guy. I mean, let's not forget, the lefties loved him, Oprah and others, for years, up until he shifted politically to the right.
Before we close out this segment, I just had to play for you something that some on the left are taking great offense this week. An Atlanta Braves baseball commentator in the crowd while filling some time in the middle of play asked for a woman in the stands' phone number live on the air. People are blasting this guy's performance. Watch.
You got 4 innings to get the numbers.
I'm on it.
Get us some more Braves fans.
All right, so they want me to get your number.
They want you to get my number.
I'm dead serious. They're saying in my ear right now. She didn't believe me because she thinks you guys are not. I'm making this up. Even if you guys weren't, I might use that in the future. That's actually a pretty good move.
This is unbelievable.
So the best part of this right now is that Wiley could totally be faking it. This might be the new move. You just walk around with a FanDuel microphone and an earpiece in and convince fans that they're actually on TV.
I should have thought of this years ago.
And for people not watching, the woman is, in fact, entering her phone number into his phone. So, Adam, are you shocked at this? Is this violently unprofessional? And is this aggressive by a man to a woman? That's what some online are saying.
Oh my, so aggressive that she picked up the phone and tapped in her number. Yeah, no, it's a little, maybe breaking a new precedent, but I certainly don't think so. I think far worse things have been done by men to get to know a woman, or it's How I Met Your Mother. It could make a cute story someday.
Hey, Josh, isn't this kind of typical? Guy likes girl, guy asks girl for number. Is there anything more exceptional about it than that?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything exceptional about what happened. I mean, except that they were live on air. So, I kind of feel for the guy who was like, hey, I'm in a pickle now. They're telling me that I need to do this. So what do? I'm live on the air. But it doesn't seem like any harm is done there. And everyone was a good sport about it.
All right, guys, thanks a lot. We'll take a break. When we get back, we'll wrap it up with some final thoughts and maybe some stories you don't want to miss that the panel has picked as their favorite. Sit tight. And welcome back as we wrap up the Lion Week in Review. Josh and Adam with some final thoughts. Adam.
Yeah, I want to share just a little bit about this school district in Texas, or schools in Texas, that are incentivizing student attendance. And there was this quote by an administrator, and she said, not all students like the core classes, math, science, and reading and all that. But when kids have something that they're a part of, they stay, they work, they get it done. What this lady's actually testifying to is the value of private education, private school. Private schools do a much better job. Some of them even require students to be part of extracurricular activities. It is much harder in a smaller, private, and paid environment to slip through the cracks, to just show up, go to some classes, and leave. Odds are your family's more involved, getting you to the school every day. You're not hopping on a school bus. The parents are signing checks or making payments. I mean, they want to know what they're getting for their money. And the whole school wraps around the kid. They're caring for body, soul, and often spirit if it's a Christian or religious school. And so the whole school's invested in making sure that Johnny or Susie or Bobby is thriving, not just academically, but involved in sports or clubs, that they're becoming the full individual that they're made to be. And so it's interesting to see public schools pick up on that. Private schools are well ahead of the game.
Josh, final thoughts?
Well, I want to call attention to a great story our D.C. correspondent Maggie Little's written. She got an exclusive interview with the White House Faith Director, Jennifer Korn, who talked to the Lion about what is so significant about this faith office, that this faith office actually has a spot in the West Wing, a room dedicated to their work, and really they're putting faith back in the public square and letting Americans know that you are welcome here, and particularly religious Americans. And so what a welcome development. But I'd encourage readers to look at that story at readlion.com.
Good stuff, gentlemen. Thank you. That'll do it. Be sure to keep up to date on all the latest news every single day at readlion.com. And again, if you missed any of today's show, be sure to check it out on YouTube. For all of us at The Lion, thanks for downloading the show and listening wherever you happen to be, and we'll see you next time.